All right, so we are live. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yes, Austin Square. Basically,
Yep.
Austin and Austin.
Double the Austin.
Awesome. So thank both of you guys so much for being here with me. I love having guys on the Skin is In podcast. So tell me a little bit about both of you guys, what you do. You both are in the film industry. And I wanted to have both of you guys on because you both have such a different perspective. So Austin, I've worked very, very extensively together with Skinspiration and now with the podcast. So you can start out by telling us just a little bit about yourself and how you got into videography, into film.
So I started off, kind of the love for videography started at a young age, maybe 15 or 16.
Yeah.
Really just seeing people live their life, but document it through videography and editing and bringing it all together, maybe like a year review video, like travel films. And that was what got me really interested. And then I kind of, like, it was one of those things where, that would be cool if I could do it, but I'm not as good as them, you know? That was the thought I had.
I can relate to other
and
things,
so I went through college and I was like, I still did videography here and there. And then I met you and Rosie. Rosie, you had on the last episode.
Shout out to Rosie.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you guys were both like, oh, no, you need to start your videography business.
Yeah, because when we met, you actually, Greer Productions was not a thing.
It wasn't a thing.
You were just kind of doing that, like, freelance. And I had, worked with people before. And then I was like, well, I'll work with Austin. I'll just, try him out. And I ended up loving it. And I was like, you need to, do this, full time. This, because you're so amazing. And you've basically done, all our video content for the last, 6 months at this point.
So I'm fresh in the game, but I'm learning a lot, and I'm learning a lot from the promotional side, the business side, but there's still that niche and that itch to want to do what I want to do and create the type of videos I want to do. So that's kind of a little bit about me.
Yeah, for sure. So, other Austin. So, tell us a little bit about you and how you got into film as well. You have a little bit of a different path as opposed to Austin, because you're kind of like me. You didn't go to school. You just did this straight out. So, how did you kind of know that this was your calling, so young?
So I grew up really big into art,
Same.
and that was my original calling, was art and painting and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I originally picked up a camera when I was 15.
Okay.
And then after that, it just kind of took off from there. I was doing GoPro cliff jumping videos and working with doing weddings, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I shot my first wedding on an iPhone. And then after that,
Not to cut you off, he just told us this story. So you filmed your very first wedding just on an iPhone.
So I hadn't even planned on doing the wedding, and they reached out to me and said they'd seen some of my GoPro videos and stuff like that. So I shot the wedding on an iPhone. I had this really cheap drone that was it was okay drone. But after that, I got 7 more weddings just off that one wedding, and it kind of took off from there. I took out a small business loan. Yeah. And then just kind of worked my way up from there. But
that's very similar to basically how I started Skinspiration. I knew I was passionate about it. I graduated from esthetician school, and before I went and worked for anybody else, I was I guess I kind of went into it with this self-confidence. I was I think I got this. I think I can do this. So I did the same thing. Just took out a small business loan and just followed the dream. So in this podcast, I really want us to dive in deep and for you guys to give some of your best tips on how to start into the film industry for those of our listeners who are really wanting to start a YouTube channel or do what you guys do. I think because both of you guys are creative directors, and I think that is just a dream job for so many people. So I really want to just kind of find out, for you guys to give basically any advice you can to the listeners. Can't talk. And also just talk about some of your own experiences in this industry. So the first thing that I think that we could dive in deep into is discussing some of the differences between going to film school and having the opportunity to kind of learn the basics of film at a university, and kind of your journey of just learning a lot of it just on yourself, kind of being more self-educated. So Greer, you can go first. Mm-hmm. What do you feel like, I guess a good jump off point is, do you need to go to film school? Do you need a degree to succeed in the film industry?
You do not. And I think even if you did, see, I minored in film. I'm graduating this semester. And what I've learned is that you learn things on your own, regardless. If you can watch people do it, you can have people tell you how to do it. And this goes with like anything, not just film. Yeah. But until you actually do it, until you like want to learn and you want to learn new things, every so often, like you're not going to get good at it until you just go in and do it. And like a funny story, my first wedding, I guess I didn't even think about the battery life of the camera. And I ran out of battery and I was over in like the wedding. I'm over here in like the corner, like charging my battery and so
the women listening to this are like cringing right now.
And so
could you imagine?
Yeah. You just learn these things by doing them, messing up a few times.
Yes.
But no, film school is not a requirement. I don't think any really type of, unless it's something to get a license, nothing is a requirement. There's no set list on how to do something.
Yeah, 100%. What about you, other Austin?
So honestly, like with that, it's a lot of it has to do with experience. Mm-hmm. So if you're wanting to like get hired on by like bigger clients and stuff like that, like they'll rarely look at like your portfolio, like not your portfolio, like your educational background, and they'll more be looking at your portfolio, especially like in today's world where a lot of people aren't even going to college and stuff, just pursuing whatever. So yeah, like what you said, basically.
Yeah, for sure. So it's mainly about what you can kind of build your portfolio, and you kind of learn by doing. Yeah. It's very much one of those things that you kind of, the only way you're going to get better is if you have those like mess ups. Mm-hmm. So that's really good. And I think that's probably comforting to a lot of people. So let's talk about really quickly the importance of film and creative directing for a business and organization. And both of you guys are working with companies. I own a company, and I, from personal experience, know and have seen just the power that creative content has in a business. I have made more money looking professional and investing in good videography and investing in good social media marketing and branding. And that's so much of like what Kayla does behind the scenes. So what do you guys have to say for people who own businesses who maybe they're like, well, I don't necessarily like want to be a director or want to be like a filmmaker. Why is film and why is videography so crucial and so important for your social media growth and just for the growth of a business in general right now in 2020?
Well, I mean, you look at the current situation we're in.
Right.
Even if you have a great product, you're not even going to be able to sell that product unless you have an online presence. Mm-hmm. And so I think if this isn't a wake-up call to any business owner listening, that you have to have some type of online presence, whether that be videography or just really good photography. Yeah, it has to be needed. And people are getting to the point where they're not going to go to your business unless they see your Instagram page, your Facebook page.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is like that, and it's people are harsh about that, and that's why like the girls who I talk to about like especially in the beauty industry and aesthetics, you cannot not have an Instagram and not put effort into that. That is like the yellow pages of like our time. Like before they even find your phone number, they're going to be looking you up on Instagram or looking you up on Facebook. And I have always found that even like a poor quality video will do so much better than a high quality photo. I think people just love video content so much, and you're exactly right. Right now, social media is basically like our only way of connecting. And I think videos, especially in film, we are so connected to humans, especially, and there's something about seeing someone and like being able to really look into their eyes, even if you're not physically like with them, and just relating to them. Like we all have people in our life who we have never met in person, but you feel like you know them because you listen to their podcast or because you follow them on YouTube and you know their life story. So what about you, Austin? What do you have to say for business owners?
think, especially with like in today's world, social media and stuff is like just now taking off. Yeah. So a lot of businesses like don't realize that people really want what's in and what looks cool. And if your content's not there backing behind the brand, then people are just going to overlook you and move on to the next guy. Right. So really pushing like having the best content and stuff like that is really something that a lot of brands should really look into.
It kind of goes back to your common theme with your podcast, like not just surviving but thriving. And I think marketing through videography, through film, is that step between surviving and thriving in a business. Sure, you can do good in a business, but if you really want to see your business at full capacity, like, filmmaking is that tool.
I do too, and I think that, like, it's honestly crazy, but you guys know I'm crazy, but a video is a memory that, like, lasts forever. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think that it's something that is, like, so precious. Like, now we just think about, like, the freedom that you have to being able to, like, pull out your phone and just take a video of something. You remember it forever. Like, how, you know what I mean? So I agree with you. I think that, and I think investing in good videography, because, y'all, I had some crazy videos. If you look back on my Instagram, it took me a while to figure out my lighting situation. It took me a while to figure out how to not sound crazy, and just how to look at the camera and when to not look at the camera. And, we can kind of dive in a little bit deeper into this later, but something that I'm just recently learning from business coaches that I work with is anytime you create something, you always need to create it twice.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we've done with both of our podcasts. Is not only do we have the podcast, we also have YouTube channels for our podcast, so people have the option to watch. And I know, because I came to you with the idea for Skin Is In, I say this all the time. I was like, I want it to be like the Joe Rogan podcast where you can just watch it, like, on YouTube. Because there's a lot of podcasts that I don't actually listen to. I just watch. So I think that is super important of, you know, if you own a business, like, kind of mastering the art of just even vlogging, I think is so important. Like, just vlogging your everyday, you know, routine, or your, you know, your employees. Like, I'm so big on get to know me videos with my employees, because I can make a post and I can announce Caitlin and talk about how amazing she is. Caitlin's our new esthetician, by the way. But until, like, I post an actual video with her and people get to hear her voice, and it just kind of it lets you get to know them on kind of like a different basis. So what do you guys have for, like, personal tips for people listening on, like, camera equipment and books to read and how to start a YouTube account and all these things? Because I feel like people are like, oh, all this is great, but, like, how do we actually take action to do these type of things?
I think the first thing you do is you ask yourself why. Why do you want to?
Yes.
Why do you want to get into filmmaking?
Yes.
And usually it's because you've seen something cool. You've seen a cool video and it's inspired you, and it pushed you to start. But you also got to, like, with that why, you have to tell yourself, like, you're not that person. And I think Rosie said this last podcast. She was like, you can't measure someone's chapter 100 to your chapter 1. And 100%. I think that's really easy to do in creating videos and filmmaking, is, like, we see these videos and we wish we could be as good as that guy. And that's the tricky part when you're getting started, whether it be marketing for your business, because you're like, oh, I don't have the right equipment that guy has, or I don't have the right equipment that business has, or maybe you don't even have the right, like, persona. Yeah. Like, you're really good in front of the camera now.
I'm learning.
But
I'm learning.
Other, like, business leaders looking at you may be like, oh, I can't be Natalie.
But you remember, like, even some of my first videos.
Right.
Like, it's just different. And I don't know. Like, I think it's one of those things you just have to keep doing and keep doing. And, like, I think comparison is the thief of joy in any situation. So I think that you definitely, honestly, like, kind of creating that, like, I'm not good enough checklist in your head is just another form of excuses. Yeah. Like, you'll never do anything valuable if you don't kind of just get over that. Yeah. So I think taking action is the first thing, is making the decision. And something else that I really want to put out there, because y'all know I like to keep it real, you have to make sure that this is something you really enjoy doing. Because for me, for example, when it comes to, like, businesses and their creative content, especially at first, you're not really going to see a huge financial return at first. Like, if you just start a YouTube channel, or you just start doing kind of in the film industry, and you guys can kind of attest to that, the money is probably something that comes much later. Yeah. I know for us, like, whenever we do video content, we do, like, YouTube videos, it's not necessarily that we're getting like a financial return on that. It's that we're trying to build a brand. Yeah. So what do you guys have to say for, like, basic equipment, like, for people who are on, like, a budget? what would you say is like your beginner kit to filmmaking for someone who like really wanted to eventually take the videos that like you do, Austin, on your Instagram, or the weddings that you do and the creative content that you guys do?
So a lot of my, like, even my more recent stuff is all shot on, especially photo-wise, it's shot on my 80D, which is a Canon. And just starting out, I mean, it's like a $1,200 camera, and it's really not... Actually, it's probably even cheaper now. It's like $800.
Yep.
And just starting out, it's a really good camera to use. And then, honestly, like, whatever you have available to you, even like an iPhone, just starting out and working your way up, it's just the small... I mean, whatever you have, honestly, is a good thing to use.
Right, just even the basics.
Or even invest in, like you, like a small, if you have that capability, like a small business loan. And because that gives you like liability. Like you have to see the return, you have to put in the work to get that return. And so it's almost like here I gotta like motivate myself to get this money back.
But like, I mean, and I'm sure you guys can attest to this, have your small things like your cameras, your microphones, has that stuff now at the point you guys where you're at in your careers, has that not paid itself off like a million times over? That's something that you can't even like when you first are starting, you're like, once again, like I talked about on the other podcast, it's a capital investment. Like you're not, it's something that you're going to purchase one time and then you're going to upgrade and then you're just going to start seeing this huge growth. So I think that is really great. What do you guys have as far as like beginner filming tips? Like even some of the stuff you guys were talking about before the podcast that I didn't even know what you were talking about, like film words. Yeah.
I think it's important to know your audience. Because that's gonna portray what your creation is. So the video you create just on your iPhone, because you create so many stories, that's filmmaking.
Oh yeah,
and hundreds of people are watching those in seconds.
Right.
And so it's important to know who your audience is, because that's gonna determine what your video is. And so I think that's one of the most important things is like when you're creating is who are you creating for.
Right.
And it's not always important just to create for those people. You need to stick true to yourself. But if you're making one video that's for one person and for one group of people, and then the next video is completely different, you've almost lost that group of people by changing it up. You know, does that make sense?
No, 100%. And like for those of you guys listening, like in business, we call that like an avatar. Or there's like another word for that, but in the beauty industry specifically, that's called like an ideal client. So basically, I have done so many like in-depth ideal client checklist. And like with Skinspiration, and also with like the Skin Is In podcast, we go so in depth to where it's like, you know, our ideal client, how old is she? What brands does she like? What celebrities do they like? What podcasts do they listen to? What YouTube channels do they follow? Like, get so specific with it and make content for that person. Yeah. So, like, if you want to become a travel photographer, a travel director, whatever the term may be, imagine the person that you want to make content for. Like, what is her or his name? Like, how old are they? Why do they love this so much? Like, what brings them to the Instagram pages that they follow? And what do you have to do to be one of those? And that is something that I truly think is millionaire advice. And I know because a millionaire told me that. My business coach, Sheila, she literally sat down with me one day and was like, you're going to go so much further, so much faster if you speak to her or speak to him. So I think just to press on that, like what Austin said is so true. It really is about knowing your audience, and your audience can change. Yeah. The person who I started selling to, quote unquote, at the beginning of my career is not the same person. I think that person has matured just like I've matured. So I think that is just such a key point.
Yeah. And Austin was talking about this earlier, other Austin, you've reached out to people. I've not personally done this because I've kind of just waited on people to come to me. But I think that's one of the like key aspects to filmmaking. You have to go and get clients. You have to go and like reach out to people, because if you don't reach out to them, they may never see your work, but they may like your work. But if it isn't for that step of like talking to them, saying, "Hey, like, can we collab on something? Can we make something together?" Like, they would never know about you.
Yeah, like, what's the worst thing they're going to say? No.
Right.
I know. Like, you suck. Like, okay. Like, life goes on.
Yeah, having the work to really back it up, too. Like, prepping before you reach out.
Maybe like don't reach out to like Tesla or something like if you've never shot a video before.
For sure. But I'm really big on with like going back to the question, like storytelling.
Yeah.
And being able to create something that resonates with your audience.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, like, for instance, when you're first getting started, you'll find out, like, what shots look good, what shots don't, like I said earlier. So really finding, like, for instance, you can get, like, an up-close shot of, like, somebody's eye or, like hair blowing or something like that to really show, like, the details of the shot.
Yeah.
And then adding on, like, an opening shot of, like, maybe a drone shot or something like that that's super wide to show the location. And then having people... like in your films too, really draws in the audience because they see somebody in it. It's not just like, I mean, nature videos are cool too, but having somebody in there helps the audience more resonate with the story.
For sure. But, no, I think that's really, really true as well. So we kind of touched on like the various like type of films, and you kind of touched on angles and how to kind of create the vision that you have. And I always say, and you guys tell me what you think about this, I always think the best writers read the most books. The best, you know, like insert the word there, like the best directors that have seen the most movies and vice versa. So if this is something you really, really want to do, study other people's work. You guys were talking about someone who's like huge in the film industry that you said everybody wants to be like.
For sure. Yeah, Sam Colder.
You look like him, by the way. Yeah.
I've had a couple of times actually, but
Yeah. But if you're watching this, go look at Sam Colder and then look at Austin Cooper. It's like twins. But yeah, if you went to my YouTube watch history for the past week, it would be scary. Like the amount of hours, like it goes. But that's what I enjoy. Like that's where my heart is, watching people.
Yes, you have to be obsessed with it, almost. And like for example, how would you say? Because we talk about this a lot. Inspiration's great, but how do you kind of find your style without ripping off somebody else and making it like a carbon copy of someone else's work? Because I'm sure this happens because we all kind of get stuck on things that are like trendy. So how would you tell people who are listening to this finding like their own unique voice? Like, because both of you guys work is very, very different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about how you guys kind of found your unique film styles and to just kind of what separates you, would you say?
Yeah. I would have to say finding something that's different than what everybody else is doing. Because so many people like Sam Colder want to be Sam Colder. They want to be the big guy. So they're going to copy their work. And I was
follow this guy.
Yeah, I was honestly like a victim to that first starting out too. Yeah. With just like seeing somebody's work and then like trying to like replicate it and stuff. And you're never going to make your way to the top being like somebody at the top. It's always, you just make yourself unique.
Yeah, so because you will always be the off-brand Sam Colder. Yeah. And that's true with anything in any industry. I mean, the beauty industry is notorious for people kind of ripping off each other's stuff. Like if you look at our Instagrams, it all looks so similar. And I'm sure it's like that in videography and in travel film and in so many other things. So what about you, Austin? What would you say to people trying to find their style, their voice?
Yeah, I think it goes... you might be passionate about videography as the hobby, but then you got to figure out like what you're passionate about beyond that, because that's going to be the story. Videography is just the tool, you know, and then the product is the story. And I think for me, it's always been telling someone else's story. Actually, that's what I love to do, and I think it's the reason I love working with like people like you, like business owners, is because I don't get to just film myself and do that. I get to tell other people's story, whether it be like a promotional video, whatever,
or weddings.
Yeah, you get to tell a love story.
Like so precious, like the happiest day of someone's life, like so just being able to document.
I think that's whenever you're getting the camera and you're like, all right, what do I do? Just go back to what you're passionate about, because that's going to be the fun thing to do anyways. You like traveling, you make travel videos. Sure. Like it's you film what you're passionate about.
Well, and there's so many. Kayla's like, he's fire. There's so many different types of film. Like, they're literally anything. Whatever you could be into, there's a film for that. So, awesome, y'all. So, just to kind of finish out, you had actually said something that I think was very, very interesting, and I want to touch on this. Creative blocks.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that?
So, a big thing for me is music. And usually, like, if I'm going through a creative rut or, like, anything like that, I like, sit back and just, like, take a deep breath. And a lot of it comes from, like, if I have, like, something going on, like, I'm really stressed from work or going through a breakup or something like that, I'll have to, like, sit back and really listen to, like, or find a song that really makes me, like takes you somewhere else. So sitting back and just, like, listening to music and getting your mind off of whatever's going on will really bring you back. I mean, for me personally, will really bring you back out of that rut. And once you get back out of the rut, whatever, like, for me, like, if it has been a breakup or if it has been, like, something like that, I'll be able to create something, like, see it from a different perspective of, like, you can create something out of it. So creating something out of your hurt or creating something out of, like, your joy or something like that really helps get rid of whatever you have going on.
Yeah, just create.
Yeah,
because, like, if you are, like, a creative person, that's what you were born to do. And we were even talking about this earlier. I feel like creativity is almost like an emotion for us. It's almost like being happy, being sad. Like, we are feeling creative. And whenever... this is how you know we're film producers. Everybody looks over.
The beep.
But yeah, so it's almost like, you know, you have days where you feel sad. Well, it's like you have days where you don't feel creative. It's almost like absent in you.
And that'll be your best work.
Yeah, that is true. That could be. And I think a big thing too, as far as, like, content wise, because, like, for me, there's been weeks where, like, I've had a creative meeting. It's been, like, Sunday night, and I had a creative meeting on Monday, and I literally had nothing, and I had to get something together for me and Kayla. And so if you are someone who is, like, in charge of a brand, I think jotting down your ideas and screenshotting things when you see it is going to be really, really effective, because sometimes, and you guys can attest to this a little bit more, I feel like you don't always have the luxury of not being creative. Like, if content's got to come out, it's got to come out. So I think that could be a really, really good tip in just overcoming it, because just kind of fight through it, do what you need to do, and just get back. And kind of having that backup list of, you know, things that when you're really not feeling great or when you're really just not feeling inspired, that you can kind of fall back on. And that's why I think social media planning is super, super huge. What about you, Greer?
For me, it's usually, what did you call it? The comparison.
That was so good.
Yeah, what did you just call it?
What did I say? This will be a funny part on the video.
I can't remember, but
the I'm not good enough checklist.
Yeah. And I think that's when I get in my creative block, is when I see, you know, the top dogs in the film industry, and I'm like, oh, I can be like them, and then I go try to be like them, and then it's nothing like theirs, and I'm like, well, shoot, I should give up. And it's in those moments where
you compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 100, and you cannot do that.
And with that, there's no, like, this is how you must do it. Even with, like, your business, you were talking about, like, all the Instagrams look the same. No one said it had to be that way. It's just this, like, unspoken, like, natural, organic thing that happened. And I think that's one of the things that's a little bit wrong with our, like, society. We all want to be like, because if someone sets a standard, we feel like that is the standard. But who's to say someone else can't set another standard, you know? I
think that too. And I think that can challenge a lot of people. And I think that I really challenge, like, our listeners to, in their industry, try to do something different. Like, maybe you have a video idea, but you're kind of wondering if, like, that would, like, work or not for, you know, your industry or for what you do. Like, I'm trying to think of an example, like something that could be totally left field. That could be what puts you, like, what lets you go viral. Like, that completely different thing. You could start a trend. You could start, like, a challenge. Like, we live in a crazy world where social media is so all over the place.
So it won't matter.
It won't matter. Like, literally, like, the people have seen crazier things. So I 100% agree with that as well.
But yeah, I didn't really answer the question how to get over the creative block, but I don't know. I think you got to always go back to what I said previously, and it's just your why. Why you started.
And that's with anything too, because, like, and I'm sure you guys have had this in your career, but you almost start, like, asking, you'll have, like, really hard days, and you'll be like, why am I even doing this? Like, this isn't worth it. Like, this is horrible. Like, I should have became a doctor. Like, you know, whatever you may be thinking. And I think someone told me this, and it's been such a good piece of advice. Your recovery time has got to be faster. You're always fighting for your recovery time to be as fast as possible, because being a business owner, I know you don't get time to, like, for mental health days.
Right.
Usually, like, you don't get to, like, lay in bed and cry about something. You have to recover because there's people who are waiting on you for their next move, like their next order. So I think that is 100% true. So both of you guys are kind of like at opposite, like, ends of the spectrum. Like, you're working with Sire Media, and you work with church outreach at Campbell University, which is awesome. So I wanted you guys to just kind of go back and forth and just kind of, anything we haven't discussed, like film-wise, that you feel like you wish you knew before you got into this industry. What would you, like, tell yourself? What do you feel like our listeners need to know?
Can I bounce a question at him too?
Oh, please.
Yeah. So, because this was something I was noticing when you introduced us to each other.
Yeah.
And I was obviously looking at his Instagram.
Yes.
That was the first thing. And so I go to your Instagram, and I kind of noticed there was like a fine line when a switch flipped, and it started, and it like just seemed like you started to get it.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know, like, was there that switch that flipped in your work that like everything started to make sense? All your like things started to go, like, get a lot better. All your creativity got a lot better.
So like you said before with comparing yourself, I had a really big problem with like comparing myself to the bigger guys.
Yeah.
And I got to the point of where I wouldn't even put out work because it wasn't up to par with what I wanted to be, which is the standard, like the best. And I got to the point of where I stopped caring about that and more of just focusing on what I can control and as in the work that I already had. And after throwing that out, like that idea out of my head and just like focusing on what I could do, I really started to like progress more and like get more creative and not caring about like what so-and-so's doing or what this guy's doing and just really zoning in on what I could do. So I just went brain dead. Can we cut this?
Give us all the cuts.
I had such a good point.
No, that was really good. Like you were just. I understand because I have been there. Like I've felt that way about like my career too. And I think something to remember, specifically with like work like this, is done is better than perfect.
Oh yeah.
Like I have deleted videos because I have had lipstick on my teeth, or because I have had like a curl that was flat, or like over the dumbest things. Because you want to put out like the best stuff, and you're seeing these people who literally have like film directors and videographers on retainer. Like this is all they're doing all day long.
Well, going back to that too, so originally I was just trying to get the projects done. Yeah. And I wasn't seeing my true potential. So really being able to sit back and like not put out content just to have content out.
To meet a deadline.
Yeah. Putting out content because like it resonates with you. Like I won't put out anything now that I don't feel like emotion off of. So like if I put out a film like that's emotional, chances are I was probably crying while making it. Or if I put out a film that's like really inspirational, like I had this really creative vibe going. Yeah. So really just focusing on what I could focusing on what I resonated with.
Yeah. I believe that 100%. I think that based on your work, you can definitely see that. Yeah. And that is a really, really good tip. Like, just don't put it out there if it doesn't resonate with you, or at least always make that the goal to create something that resonates with you as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Hey babes, it's Natalie. Thank you so much for listening to the Skin is In podcast. If you want more, subscribe to our YouTube channel and also follow us on iTunes. You can also find us at Skin is In podcast on Instagram and Facebook. And remember, why survive when you can thrive?